9/11 outrage. Is this famous September 11th victim really a phony?
Are you a fraud, Tania?
Then the Phil Spector case.
Just enormous disappointment.
Did his own sons want him convicted?
I definitely want to see this happen again. There has to be a conclusion.
Then pepper sprayed at the drive-thru. A customer hits a fast food worker right in the face and takes off. And it's happening more and more. And shocking new information about the man who's accusing O.J. Simpson of armed robbery.
He came towards me, picked me up, and bodily threw me against the kitchen counter.
He lived in her house, and what she says he did to her could impact the case against O.J.
It's probably the most frightening time of my life.
Now, Inside Edition with Deborah Norville.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Her story gripped everyone who heard it. A survivor of the World Trade Center attack on September 11th, one of a handful above the point of impact to get out alive. Her tale of survival was spellbinding, and now, according to a new report, also may be a pack of lies. April Woodard reports.
For 6 years, Tania Head has been telling an amazing tale of survival. She says she was on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center when the plane hit on 9/11. Badly burned, she escaped before the South Tower collapsed. Her beloved fiancé died in the attack.
I was on the South Tower, and I lost my fiancé that day.
She became one of the best-known victims of 9/11. She conducted tours of Ground Zero for VIPs, including Rudy Giuliani and former New York Governor George Pataki.
Visitors come to New York City, all they see is this fence and this wall and this hole in the ground, and they really have no connection except for what they saw on TV that day.
She even became president of the World Trade Center Survivors Network charity. But Tania Head's story of survival may be fiction, according to a front-page expose in the New York Times. The family of the man she claims was her fiancé told the Times they had never heard of Tania Head. She said she worked for Merrill Lynch and that she had degrees from Harvard and Stanford. All three confirmed to Inside Edition they have no record of her. We tracked Ms. Head to this residential building in Midtown Manhattan, but when she finally showed up, she wasn't eager to talk. Can we talk to you for a minute, please? Just let us are you a fraud, Tania? Tania, are you a fraud?
The feeling of a betrayal is just profound.
An outraged Richard Zimbler of the World Trade Center Survivors Network says Tania Head was fired as president of the group this week.
We wanted to believe her. We wanted to give her every chance to clear her name, and we're still waiting.
Zimbler says what she has done is unforgivable.
I know many people will have a lot of difficulty forgiving her.
Are you a fraud, Tania?
Tania did an audio memoir for the 9/11 Tribute Center. It has now been removed. You've heard of drive-by shootings. Well, police are investigating a different twist where the attendant at a fast food restaurant is the victim of a drive-by pepper spray attack. As Paul Boyd reports, this is just the latest in a wave of attacks against fast food workers.
A stinging attack at a McDonald's drive-thru as a customer blasts the server in the face with pepper spray. Watch again as the car filled with 5 people pulls up to the window. The driver, seen laughing, leans forward and a back passenger pulls out a large can and deploys the burning spray into the drive-thru. 2 McDonald's workers had to be sent to the hospital. And you'll never believe what led to the vicious attack. Police in Florida say the 5 passengers became enraged and verbally abusive when the employee told them a 69-cent soft drink special was no longer available.
These aren't teenagers playing pranks like we did years ago where you have egg in your face. This is pepper spray. Using it against an attendant at a fast food restaurant is a felony crime.
This is the latest and most serious example of what appears to be a growing trend of violence launched against drive-thru fast food workers. The internet is flooded with videos of people throwing soft drinks in the faces of fast food employees while yelling the catchphrase, "Fire in the hole."
Fire in the hole!
Some seem to make light of the prank, compiling videos and setting them to music. But security officials say it's no joke.
Fire in the hole! Now it's escalated. They take pepper spray, as you see here, and they've graduated from criminal mischief to felony assault.
5 months after opening statements, the trial of Phil Spector is over. The judge declared a mistrial after the jury announced it was hopelessly deadlocked on a decision. But two close observers weren't undecided. They thought the jury should have reached a verdict, and they want Spector tried again. Surprisingly, they are Phil Spector's own sons, and they spoke exclusively with Inside Edition.
With his trademark blank stare, you'd never know that Phil Spector has just gotten good news, a hopelessly deadlocked jury. His pretty young wife by his side, Spector took his bodyguard's hand and was led through a throng of cameras. But then we caught his face erupt in a rare, quick smile before he ducked into a waiting car.
Disappointing.
Now Spector's own son says he's sad the jury didn't reach a verdict.
I'm just rather disappointed in it. It just prolongs what's going to be inevitable. So I'm discouraged by that.
Louis Spector told Inside Edition he wants his father to be tried again.
I definitely want to see this happen again. I definitely want to see the end result to all this. Yeah, there has to be a conclusion.
And remarkably, Louis is being joined by his twin brother Gary, who reveals that life with their father was pure hell. In an Inside Edition exclusive, Gary says his father, who produced some of the greatest pop songs of all time, has a history of threats of violence against the women he saw socially.
Did you ever hear him threaten a woman?
Many times. All I know is the women sounded like they feared for their lives. And why some of them would come back, I never knew.
Gary and Louis, who were adopted by Spector at age 6, tell similar stories of alleged childhood abuse. Gary even says his father forced him to have sex with a woman who was blindfolded when he was a teenager.
Next thing I know is I'm being disrobed, I'm being blindfolded. I was also handcuffed.
He says it was his first sexual experience.
Was your father in the room when
Yes.
this happened?
Oh, yeah. He was right there. And he's basically trying to tell me that this is something I would enjoy. As he said, think of it as a learning experience. And he even told me he wished this had happened to him when he was younger.
What goes through your mind when you think about what your father did and arranged?
I try not to think too much about it, but I do have a very strong feeling that has a lot to do with why I really haven't had a girlfriend since I was 21.
The jury is unable to reach a unanimous verdict.
The jury voted 10-2 to convict Spector of the shooting death of actress Lana Clarkson. We spoke to juror Ricardo Enriquez.
I don't think there was anything that we could have done to switch the, change the opinion of the other two jurors. And as a result of that, we decided to end it.
Now many are wondering whether a celebrity can ever get convicted by a California jury. O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, and Robert Blake were all acquitted in their trials.
Is it possible to get a celebrity guilty verdict in Los Angeles?
Yes, it is. These jurors voted 10-2 for guilt. There was an issue with a couple of jurors, so maybe a few different jurors, had they been seated instead of the two holdouts, would have been able to convict. But this is a very, very different case from O.J. Simpson and Robert Blake. Those jurors voted 12-0 acquittal.
But many of the most seasoned court watchers are still expressing outrage that Phil Spector is not behind bars. Vanity Fair columnist Dominick Dunne.
Enormous disappointment. I mean, I thought he was guilty.
Lawyers from both sides will be back in court next week to discuss a possible retrial.
Next, shocking new information about the man who's accusing O.J. Simpson of armed robbery.
He came towards me, picked me up, and bodily threw me against the kitchen counter.
He lived in her house, and what she says he did to her could impact the case against O.J.
It's probably the most frightening time of my life.
Many of the characters caught up in the O.J. Simpson Vegas robbery case have had interesting pasts, but one of them, who appears to be the victim in the alleged robbery, is seen by one woman as anything but. She says he stalked her, a crime for which Al Beardsley was ultimately convicted. She spoke exclusively with our Jim Moret.
It's probably the most frightening time of my life.
Her name is Yolanda Smith, and she's talking exclusively to Inside Edition about this man, Al Beardsley. Beardsley is one of the two sports memorabilia collectors who say they were victims in the now infamous O.J. Simpson armed robbery case. Here's what he told the Today Show.
As a victim in a takeover robbery crime, it is extremely horrifying and scary.
How did you feel when Al Beardsley was portrayed as the victim?
Mr. Beardsley is not a victim. He's never been a victim. He's always been the aggressor.
Yolanda Smith says Beardsley terrorized her for 2 years. He was convicted of felony stalking in 2005.
He threatened to slit my sister's throat and dump her in a lake.
Did you believe him?
I was more angry than I was anything else.
She told me it all started after Beardsley rented this room in her Moreno Valley, California home.
The room Beardsley was renting was right here. Your bedroom is right here, just a few feet away.
Here's a picture of Beardsley's room when he was living here, showing his most prized possession, a football autographed by O.J. Simpson. He also proudly displayed this photo of himself with the man now accused of robbing him.
Did Al Beardsley ever talk to you about O.J. Simpson?
He's constantly talking about him. He made it sound like he was like the best of his friends, which he wasn't.
Smith says she was never Beardsley's girlfriend, but over time, he became obsessed with her.
He was hassling me continuously, 30, 40 phone calls a day.
A day?
A day.
She finally served him with this eviction notice and says it led to a violent argument.
I went over to the phone to dial 911. He came towards me, ripped the phone out of my hand, picked me up, and bodily threw me against the kitchen counter.
She says the nightmare continued even after she went to police.
He followed me on the freeway. He chased me down the street. He never stopped. He always told me, I never lose.
She hired a private detective who discovered at least 5 restraining orders had been filed against Beardsley. Inside Edition has also learned he has a long criminal record, including convictions for receiving stolen property, battery, and assault dating back to 1988. Now these revelations about Beardsley's past may impact his credibility in the armed robbery case of O.J. Simpson.
I don't think anybody believed him. I don't believe him. I don't believe he was a victim.
Al Beardsley is in jail in Nevada on a parole violation stemming from his stalking conviction.